Welcome back to Shit Talk Fridays, everybody. I'm Jeanna.
And I'm Ivo.
Happy Friday, Ivo.
Happy Friday.
I'm not even gonna front. I'm like super hyped for today's episode.
Yeah, I can see why.
I don't think the reason you think I'm hyped for it is why I'm hyped for it, though.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just like in a hype mood today. I was listening to some music earlier that got me like pretty hyped. So I think that's what it is. I'm like piggybacking off of that feeling.
So, but what is it about the episode that you feel like has got you hype?
I think I'm just excited overall just to talk today.
All right, I can feel that.
I feel like it's been a while, but it's only been a fucking week, so
yeah.
I don't know. But let's cheers. We're drinking wine today, actually, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, we decided to tone it down a little bit. We're going kind of hard with the tequila.
Take it easy. Take it easy. All right, so let's cheers.
Cheers.
And it's just white wine, nothing special. So, in the spirit of last week's episode, which was Fuck These Kids, we decided to have an episode called Fuck These Parents. And I know that may sound kind of harsh, like, damn, yo, fuck parents. But from my personal experience, I grew up having a lot of family and friends tell me things like, I should forgive my mother and my father for the things that they did to me because they're my parents.
Yeah, well, this episode goes out to trifling ass parents.
Yeah. And not necessarily just trifling. They could just be really difficult parents. You get what I'm saying?
I mean, I think we're talking about like toxic parents in particular.
Yeah.
Trifling. I mean, what I would like to call is trifling, because some of the characteristics of toxic parents are really fucking trifling.
Yeah. For 1000%.
So, yeah.
I personally deeply resented when people would say things to me like, you know, you should forgive your mom, you should forgive your dad. They're your parents. They gave life to you. And in those moments when people would say things to me like that, it was a total dismissal in my eyes of my feelings and my experiences. So I like really hated when people said that type of shit to me. Especially when someone didn't know like the full like story of what I went through with my parents. So for someone just to easily just be like, yeah, just forgive them, and you know, because they gave you life. I don't think it's that easy.
I feel like for many years you misconstrued that statement. You know, I feel like you took it as literally like forgive them, you know, as like, hey, I forgive you, and you know, you have been forgiven, and kind of like allowing them to think that or believe that all their actions, you know, have not affected you. But in most cases, when someone has dealt with trauma, especially by the hands of another person, it's important for that person to forgive them, not personally to them, just to go through their own experience, most cases by themselves, to forgive, right? Because when you have harsh feelings against someone, carrying those harsh feelings can affect you as a human. Now, when you forgive someone, and when you literally forgive someone, you release those harsh feelings. When you have an argument, when we have an argument, was to where like I may have done something to you, and then you forgive me. That's it. You forgive me, and you move on, right? In most cases, that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
So that's the idea of forgiving. It's so that you just forgive, so that you're able to move on. You don't carry those things. You let them go because you have forgiven. You don't necessarily have to forgive that person face to face, but I get why, you know, you felt the way that you felt and you reacted the way that you reacted because of your experiences. But for a long time, I felt like that you took that as like you needed to like literally forgive them personally.
That's great and all, Evo. Fine, I may have misconstrued what the term forgiveness meant when it came to my parents, but you yourself were one of those people that put me in a position where you said, you know, this is your mother. Once upon a time when right before we were going to get married, I was really adamant about like not having my mother involved in our wedding or the whole marriage thing. And you really pushed the issue of having her around because you felt like, let's give her another chance. And I think this is an important piece of your life. That
she was reaching out at the time too.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to hear it. And you were one of those people that at that time you literally were like, she's your mother. And it wasn't until my mother burned you that you, for the first time, understood the depth of my unwillingness to have a relationship with her. And I think that there are many other kids, young adults, and fully grown adults out there that have this type of dynamic with their parents that outsiders don't understand why they choose not to have a relationship with them.
Correct. Well, not having a relationship with someone, you can forgive someone and still choose not to have a relationship with them. The forgiving part is for your own personal emotional health, right? It's for your internal well-being.
Yeah.
It's for the ability for you to go about life without carrying toxic emotions, traumatic emotions with you, because forgiveness is like the beginning of healing, they say.
That sounds so beautiful. I'm not there yet. I definitely have not forgiven my parents for the things that I have went through in my life. I'm not ready to forgive them yet. And I think there's a lot that goes into that. But I wanted to share some of the signs that someone can identify what is actually a toxic parent, or what actually is a parent that has a level of toxicity that would potentially be sometimes unrecognizable. Like, maybe some people may not view this as a toxic trait from their parent because they may just look at it like, oh, this is my parent. They are doing this because they're parenting me. Even though there could be a dynamic where the parent is parenting someone that's an adult, or trying to parent someone that's an adult, and it's fucking unnecessary. My situation was a little bit different. My mother was toxic from when I was very young. I think sometimes the toxicity can develop over years, and she also suffered from some mental illness. So that scenario was a little bit different, but I choose not to have a relationship with her. So there are times.
Well, let's be clear. I choose not to have a relationship with her too. Right?
Yeah.
She made it clear that having a relationship with her is very difficult.
Yeah.
So
It's actually it's I don't even know if I could think of the word right now, but what I will say is this. I find myself sometimes envious of other people's relationships with their parents, and when I hear them talk ill of their parents, sometimes in the back of my mind, I almost have the same type of dialogue that people would have towards me, which is, oh, they're your parents. Like, you should be so lucky that they're in your life and that. But at the same time, I have to catch myself and realize that these parents, a lot of the times, are intrusive into these children's lives. And it's like a level of disrespect.
Yeah.
And I have to really value that my friends or, acquaintances, that when they speak this way of their parents, it's not that they have this like hatred towards them. It's that they have boundaries that they're trying to set and their parents are not respecting them.
Yeah.
So that being said, there are some signs that you can identify if you have a toxic parent. And the first one that I want to share is if your parent is self-centered. So this would mean that the parent is only considering their own feelings in almost every scenario and never placing your feelings at hand. They're also going to be co-signing their bad behaviors as how they function, and it should almost just be accepted. There's also like a level of narcissism that comes with that type of self-centeredness when a parent is willing to say things like, well, this is the way that I am, and you should be okay with that. Or this is my house and these are my rules and it's my way or the highway type shit, where they're not even going to give any consideration to your feelings. Or let's say you're not even living in the house anymore. You're on your own. You're fucking grown ass adult. You got kids and all that shit. And you still have parents that, let's say you call them to say hello. Hey, mom. Hey, dad. How you doing? And the conversation immediately turns to, the conversation immediately turns to them just like berating you with things about their life and their feelings, and not at any point just turning and go, hey, how's your day?
Yeah.
just totally centering every conversation or every experience around them. I think a lot of the times parents will have this like idea that I'm the parent, I'm the higher power when it comes to the dynamic of parent and child.
Yeah, well, it's like, it sounds like a type of parent that expects 100% obedience.
Yeah, it's also the type of parent that expects you to respect them with no respect given.
Right, right. And then if you challenge that in any which way, they become aggressive.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying fuck these parents.
Well, fuck those parents, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good parents
Yeah,
out there.
I'm saying fuck these parents.
But these parents that we're talking about in particular,
yeah,
need to get your act together. For sure.
I literally have no problem saying fuck these parents. I made a very hard decision to separate myself from my mother. It wasn't easy, but I understood it was for the betterment of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are other people out there that they may be struggling with that. And they may be saying to themselves, oh God, this is my mother, this is my dad, I should let them be a part of my life, even though that they are putting, they're poisoning your overall livelihood. That shit can't happen. So another trait that a toxic parent may have is they're always seeking control. I also feel like this couples right with being self-centered. When they make everything about themselves, they also want to be in control of everything that's happening. They're also not part of that. They're not valuing their own child's choices or their child's opinions. It's, again, that it's my way or the highway type shit. And that's even happening when kids are not living in the house. And I say kids, but I also mean adults. I know many other grown adults that are friends of mine, acquaintances of mine, that they literally have been yo, my mother or my father will just come to my house unannounced, and they'll be trying to tell me how to raise my kids and do how to clean things in my house. This is the type of control that the parent is trying to enforce on their child, even when they're no longer under their own roof.
Yeah, that's kind of partially the reason why I end up leaving home myself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because my stepmother was at that point being very, very nosy and spending a lot of time being in my business. And it just got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. And I just, I had to go. I don't know what it was at that point in time, but, I wasn't a kid. I was, in my...
You were in your 20s.
I was in my early 20s. At an age where you kind of want to give your child respect and privacy at that, so they can kind of feel like their own. Mm-hmm. But at that time, I felt like she was even being more intrusive and more, excuse me, more nosy about the things that I was doing.
Yeah.
And so, because again, you know what? Granted, in her defense, I wasn't making the greatest decisions at the time.
I was gonna be.
Yeah, I wasn't. I really wasn't. But still, again, we didn't even have that kind of relationship where, she I just don't feel like we had the relationship as to where she would need to overstep that boundary and try to be so much a part of my life, when in the beginning of our relationship she really wasn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just felt like she was more paranoid and more concerned about wanting to tell my dad about the things that I was doing, because I think she kind of wanted me out. Mm-hmm. That's just I don't know that for a fact, but that's just my interpretation. Anyway, it just got to a boiling point where I had to go because she was being very intrusive.
Okay. Well, the joke was on her.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next toxic parent trait that a parent could possibly have and will identify as them being toxic, which is that they are harshly critical. Mm. In this instance, a parent is never taking the moment to reflect on their own mistakes and flaws, but easily are ready to point the finger at any mishap in their child's life. There's a lack of empathy. It's almost as if they view this approach as helpful towards the child's growth, when in turn it's actually traumatic. They think that they're helping them. Mm-hmm. So some examples of when a parent can be harshly critical is when a parent will make comments about a child's appearance because their appearance doesn't fall in line with the parent's views of how they should look, whether it be their weight, how they choose to dress, how they choose to do their hair. Any of those features that a child may choose to exude in their own way, a parent can be harshly critical on it. In addition to that, it could be about the type of people that the child is choosing to bring home, or the type of person that the child is choosing to date or marry. I find these instances so insane, because a lot of the times when I see this type of commentary coming from a parent, the parent is deeply flawed.
Well, I think that's where it comes from.
I would agree with you. But isn't there, or do you think that there ever is like an aha moment for a parent like this? That they're like, wow, I'm literally here pointing the finger to my child and being so critical and so harsh on them. And I'm not taking a moment to reflect on like my own.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that there are those situations where parents have a moment where they realize that they're kind of acting out their traumas on their kids. And, you know, by no way, shape, or form are we trying to be insensitive to parents that have grown up with traumas. And that's precisely what they're doing, is that they're acting out their traumas onto their children. But I think that, you know, a lot of parents go through, I mean, I know parents, I know my brother has gone through that. I know I have gone through that.
Yeah, so have I.
You know, so I feel like that, yes, there are parents that, you know, reach a point in their life where they realize like, whoa, I'm causing more harm than I am good in this relationship. And I'm the cause of it. And it's because of my own personal traumas that I haven't dealt with. And then eventually seek to resolve those traumas and eventually develop a better relationship with their children.
Wouldn't you say in a lot of these instances, the parent then pushes the child farther away?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, with toxicity, aggression, not being supportive, you know, verbal abuse and all those things, you know, it's hard to have a close relationship with somebody when that's the type of energy that you project out to someone that you're supposed to love. So, yeah, absolutely. There's a huge wedge that gets driven, you know, but you don't know what you don't know, right? If you're a parent, not only are you dealing with the frustration of raising a child, but when it comes to those frustrations, the only thing that you know of a solution is what you got as a child growing up, right? That's the only thing you can reflect back onto as what parenting is, right? So your child spills milk. Okay, so how do I act to this? Obviously, I'm not happy about it, but when I spilt milk, this is what happened to me. So that's how I'm going to act myself. I don't, you know, as a person, you don't know any better.
I'm actually going to push back on that. I actually used to think like that for a long time. I used to think, what better do I know? I had no positive examples of what it was to be a parent. And now later on in my life, I realized that there are many ways that you can find examples of how to positively parent. So for someone to say, I don't know any better, especially in this day and age, information is at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
I actually just finished reading a book called What Girls Need, because I literally said to myself, I literally almost have no clue how to positively support and reinforce my daughter's journey and goal, because I never had that instilled in me as a young woman. So I only had really one example in my life, which was my aunt, and she did an amazing job at raising her daughter, but we now live very far apart from each other. I can call her. I know that's, but I wanted to take it upon myself to find some other ways to give myself the information that I needed to have that. So I don't want that to be like an escape. Or like not an escape, like a what's
an
that?
Excuse.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to say excuse. I don't want parents to use that as a reason to say, "Oh, I didn't know any better."
Well, but I'd like to highlight the fact that you said precisely that. At one point in time, you used to think that way, and then later on in life, you realized that there was other ways of thinking, right? So you yourself was a person that was going about life parenting, not knowing what you didn't know, and I feel like that. As a parent, you're gonna go through that. I mean, it's just like the beginning of parenting. It's all new. You're learning about it. There's no book on parenting, quote unquote, as they say. You're kind of like just taking things as they go and trying to be the best parent that you can. Now, if you have traumatic experiences as a child that you had with your own parents, then that can easily get mixed up in the way that you're raising your own child. In a perfect world, one would like to think that a parent reflects on the actions that they do, on, you know, that they have with their children, and learn from those and grow to be a better parent. And then that's when the pivot happens,
Yeah.
where a parent now realizes that there are options, there are better ways to go about raising your children, and act, and how you respond to the things that they do.
Yeah. I always like to say that the library's free.
The library is free.
I actually just got the book of Fire and Blood for House of Dragons at the library for free.
Right, but you have to want the change, right? You have to want to be better, right? You have to. It's the self-reflecting portion of it has to be going on. So if you have a parent who's not doing that, then they're just acting in toxicity. They're living in toxicity.
And that is I'm so happy that you brought it back to that, is
Yes.
that they're not looking to self-reflect.
Right.
That's part of the toxic trait, that if you need to have like an identifier in your parent, if they're not willing to look into other ways to change the way that they behave, then you know that you have a toxic parent on your hands.
Absolutely.
All right, so the last one that I have is signs that you may have a toxic parent is that they lack boundaries. So in this instance, they're inserting themselves into your life without regard or concern of how it may affect you. And it could even be in the aspect of it being physical, them just showing up at your house unannounced, them inviting themselves to functions that you had no intention on inviting them on, them when you're speaking to them maybe over the phone or whatever it is, them just placing themselves in an experience that you had no intention of putting them in. Or it could be what I would consider non-tangible, in the sense of like maybe they're making comments or trying to give advice about how you should conduct your relationship or how you should conduct your marriage. They're not respecting your boundary of being like, hey, mom or dad, listen, this is my husband or wife, or this is my relationship, and this is how I'm going to go about doing things. And them going, yeah, I actually don't give a fuck. I'm going to tell you what I think you should do, regardless of these boundaries that you're trying to set with me. Because I know that there's a lot of parents that they think that they know better, and they're just going to bogart your shit and tell you what they think that you should be doing in your life.
Right.
Now, I personally don't have that problem. I actually have the complete opposite. I have no parent giving me any fucking advice. And sometimes I find myself in instances where I wish I did, where there are times where you and I go through a hard time and I'm like, who do I call? Have no mom.
Right.
And not sure as hell not calling my father, because he's one of those people that I can't get a word in. I literally call him and I think I say about 3 words, which is yes, okay, and oh really? That's 4 words, but whatever.
All things being said, I feel like you still managed to create somewhat of a support system throughout your life as you were growing up. And I think
God
that's,
for that.
And that's the important part.
And that is attributed to my friends.
Yes.
And to my husband.
And to a special family member.
Yeah, my aunt,
yes.
Melissa. Like, she's my fucking angel.
Yes. She's
literally
my angel. She's my angel too.
Yeah, she literally is the one person in my life from when I was very little that I attest a lot of my ability to see things in a better light. Her and even so too now my brother.
She has literally saved both of us in our own different ways.
Yeah, 1,000%, right? To 3,000% is what
to infinity and beyond. With
what Tony Stark says.
Yeah.
So now that I've shared some of the signs that you can potentially see in a toxic parent, I would love for you to share with us what you have about ways that someone can deal with these type of things.
Right. So,
because it's real easy to just say, oh yeah, this is the way that a parent could be toxic, and
now just go fuck yourself.
Right? Because fuck these parents.
Yeah, fuck these parents. So what I'd like to know is, what were some of the ways that you coped with living in a toxic household?
Wow, Ivo, that's actually a really great question. Some of the ways that I coped with living in a toxic household.
Yeah.
I probably did one of the worst things that you can do, which is I buried and hid a lot of my emotions.
I'm glad that you were able to share it in that light.
Yeah, I had a lot of feelings about what I was going through as a young girl and as a teenager that I chose just to keep private and locked away in Pandora's box. And I know now that that is the worst thing that you can do. I wish I would have spoken up more and found ways to share my trauma. But unfortunately, I was a young girl and I didn't really have access to it. And ladies and gentlemen, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Like, that type of stuff wasn't really... The conversation of that kind of stuff didn't happen the way that it happens now.
Right. Well, in your case, you know, something happened where you were, you saw that, you know, that if the truth came out about the way that your household ran, you could have potentially been taken away. So your immediate reaction was to suppress the truth.
Yeah, I would have been taken away for the second time.
Yeah, so you...
Because I got taken away. I got taken away one time, and then I was afraid that if I spoke up the second time that it would happen to me again because I was still a minor.
So instinctively, you suppressed the truth. And that's how you went about suppressing everything that was traumatic about the way you grew up.
But I actually did it before I got taken away.
Yes, I know that.
Because I knew that if I went to school and they were like, hey, Jeanna, how you doing? I'm like, actually not so great because my mother hasn't been home for 3 days and I've been eating mayonnaise sandwiches.
Right. That's precisely what I'm talking about. You knew that if this stuff came to light, it would be a problem. And it would bring problems to your house. And that's the last thing you wanted. So you became very good at suppressing all of it and making everything seem like everything was all right.
Yeah, so that's how I coped. And for anybody that knows me, please don't do that.
So that, that's the precise reason why I wanted to ask this question. I wanted you to speak about, one of the ways not to deal with living in a toxic household. And then I wanted to kind of go into some of the ways that you should deal with living in a toxic household.
I'm so excited to hear this.
So 5 ways and tips that I have on dealing with toxic parents or living in a toxic household is 1, practice self-care. And what I mean by practice self-care is having toxic parents can take an emotional toll on you. Maintaining a good self-core is essential for dealing with any stress in your life. Make an effort to do at least one positive and healthy activity for yourself each week to alleviate the stress. You might also do something like meditation or exercise or art or reading or take a walk in the park or try to figure out something that gives you the release of dopamine, the release of joy, right? Something that's going to make you feel good that you're doing for yourself so that something feels right. A lot of people don't make it a focal point to self-care for themselves. They just kind of day in and day out deal with the traumatic emotions that are going on in their household, and like yourself, don't do anything about it or suppress it or just kind of just every day in and day out just taking these blows and just acting like nothing happened without maintaining and trying to trying to make a home out of their emotions, So I think that's very important. I think that would have been helpful for you at that young age if you had known to do that, to kind of do things that were good for your self-esteem.
It's interesting that you say that. One of the things that I actually really enjoyed doing when I was younger, when I was going through that experience, was I ran track in high school.
And you loved it.
I loved it. I loved it for a lot of different reasons. I loved it because it was hard. I loved it because it challenged me. I loved it the most because of the team environment that I was in and the love that I felt for my team. And when we traveled to like meets and shit like that, I felt like a fucking queen with my team, because we were all so connected in this way of running together and, doing things together. I then carried that on to later in my life where I started to work out and become more fit. Running became an outlet for me. I actually still love to run. I consider it like my reset, where I get on the treadmill or I go outside and it's hard and I put myself through it because it like resets my brain, because I'm like, if I can do this hard thing, then anything that I come in contact with this week is gonna be nothing.
And the fact that you were able to involve yourself in something that surrounded you around people that eventually became your teammates. You kind of became a family. It gave you that thing that you were missing from home. So that
Yeah.
made that experience that much more special for you.
Yeah, for sure. I actually had to fight for that too, because my mother at the time wanted me to pick up my little brother from school. And I remember getting into a really intense argument with her, and I turned around and I was like, he's not my fucking kid. Find a way to get him picked up. I'm going to join the track team.
Well, that's a good thing that you stood up for yourself, because
I did, but in the end, I wound up taking care of my little brother anyway.
for a long time too.
For a long time. I love that little motherfucker, but go ahead.
Yeah, he's great. Another thing that is helpful when dealing with toxic parents or living in a toxic household is remember that your feelings and experience are valid. And what I mean by that is you may have been felt like your emotions were wrong. Remember that whatever you think and feel, that your experience deserves to be recognized. Your family may not be able to support you in this way, but you can give yourself this recognition. That is like the classic living in a toxic household relationship is like, where the child's emotions are meant to feel like they're not shit.
Yeah, they're being totally disregarded.
What you say, what you feel is meaningless, has no power. So take it, make it an important part of your life to tell yourself that your feelings do matter. Because in that moment, only you're going to be able to give yourself that recognition, because you're obviously not getting it from the people that you look up to. So,
or the people that you live with, because you may not look up to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about the parents in this particular case.
Yeah.
You know, which is sad, you know, but it is what it is. Second is have realistic expectations. You know.
Second? You mean third?
Did I start from 4 or 5?
You start from 5. You said self-care.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. The third one.
So third, have realistic expectations. You know, if you know your parents are toxic, then expect them to be. Toxicity in a child's life from their parents is what I would like to describe as an obstacle, something that you want to try to avoid in any which way possible. So being realistic and just knowing the devil that you dance with gives you the opportunity to be able to avoid the toxicity whenever it presents itself. So it's important to just, be real about it. Don't be in denial about it. Don't try to sugarcoat it. Don't try to pacify it in any way. Excuse, oh, my parents just like this. Oh, they're just like that. They're just like this. Fine. But that doesn't take away from the fact that they're toxic.
Yeah, don't make excuses
just
for their behavior.
Yes, thank you for that. Don't make excuses for their behavior. Call the kettle black. It is what it is. And as long as you're able to do that, and it's very important that you do that, you'll be able to see it coming and you'll be able to avoid it as much as possible. I think the more that you're able to avoid it, the less you'll absorb it, and the less you'll have it to carry these emotions. It's kind of like, doing the whole Matrix thing, the Neo, where you kind of just, when the toxicity comes your way, you just let that fly by you, I actually did that a lot.
I will say that sounds a little bit easier said than done. I think if you are not living in the household anymore, that may be a little bit easier. I think that if you are a young person in a house and you're dealing with these type of parents, avoidance of their toxic behavior may not be as easy.
I'm speaking from experience.
Okay, so I just want to give you an example. I also speak from experience dealing with toxic parents and having to deal with their interactions. There are times even when you try to avoid it, they meet you head on.
I know, I get that.
So what is a way that you think, I would love if you, based on your experience and us being parents as well, how do you think someone that lives in a house that is dealing with a toxic parent and is really trying to be realistic about their parents' behavior, how do you think they should, if they just can't avoid it, right? Because avoidance sometimes is avoiding an obstacle if it's the only avenue. So, for example, when you're trying to go down a road and it's been blocked, but that's the only road you can go down, what other...
So, what I mean by avoiding it is not allowing it to affect you, not allowing yourself to absorb the toxicity. Like,
Okay.
I'm not saying that, you can avoid the whole situation,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been in many situations where they were unavoidable. The thing is when I say, be realistic about your environment and about the situation that you're in, is calling it for what it is, right? This iPad is an iPad. We're being real about it, right? I'm recognizing this as an iPad. So if by me recognizing my father at the time as being a very toxic person in many ways, whenever his toxicity presented itself, me personally, I just didn't let it bother me, because I identified him as being toxic.
So you said you said you didn't let it bother you.
In most cases, yes.
Okay. So tell me exactly how you went about not letting it bother you. Like, what exactly did you do? Because I think that's so key.
So I just didn't take it personal, right? I didn't take it personal because it's not. I didn't look at the situation as he didn't like me,
Mm-hmm.
right? He felt this way about me,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that for me in that situation would have hurt my feelings. If he's yelling at me and cursing at me, he must not like me. He hates me, That right there would hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
But rather than looking at it that way, no, he's just toxic. And that has nothing to do with the way that he feels about me. It's just who he is as a person. So therefore, seeing it in that light helped me deal with not taking it personal.
Yeah.
Whenever he exploded and just that's he's dealing with his own traumatic emotions. He obviously has a lot of things that he hasn't processed in his life. And I feel like if he did, he wouldn't be acting this way. So that's just who he is as a person.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yes.
I think that is so fucking key, because not taking something personal and identifying that it is them and not you.
Yeah.
That shit is so key, because it gives you power.
It gave me a lot of peace too.
Yeah, you literally just took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
It gives you a lot of power and it gives you a lot of peace. In that same instance, I think about you and I. There were times in the beginning of a relationship where you would blow up and I would just be
Mhm.
like, he has a problem.
It's just who I was at the moment.
I gotta go,
Mm-hmm.
because this ain't got nothing to do with me. And I found peace in that, because I wasn't inserting myself into that,
Right.
into that that equation.
Yeah.
So I think it's so amazing that you were able to identify that.
Yeah.
You have a way, the force is strong with you, Ivo.
You know what's funny, right? My dad's favorite word was motherfucker. You motherfuck this, motherfuck that, right? And I used to just tell myself.
Yo, hold on real quick. Fuck these parents. Go ahead.
I remember I used to tell myself, like, I'm not a motherfucker. Like, what is he talking about? And I used to I remember I used to laugh at it. You know what I mean? Because
Oh man.
it was just his way of expressing his anger and
Yeah.
frustration. He had no other, I feel like it's
Yeah,
like,
he was so uneloquent about it.
I used to imagine one of the first words that he learned when he came to this country was probably motherfucker. Somebody called him a motherfucker out of anger, and so that's how he expressed his anger to anybody. He called him a motherfucker.
You know what that reminds me of in the movie Luca,
Right.
where they come out of the ocean and he's like, "What's so wrong with you, stupido?" And people are like, "What the fuck?" And it's
Exactly.
because they had just learned that.
And so, you know what's interesting? That was the beginning of me not allowing certain words to affect me by just taking a moment to recognize that those words there's nothing true about them.
Yeah, they
hold no truth.
They hold no truth.
You know what I mean? Especially from the person that they're coming from. And so
That's great. I literally love that story. So I feel like you have two more.
I do.
Yeah.
So
That was great.
number 4 is
Wait, you mean number 2? I love you.
I am all messed up with these numbers. Yes, sorry. Number 2. Thank you for that, Jeanna.
You're welcome.
Rely on your support system. As children, we instinctively rely on our parents. But when that's not an option, don't hesitate to reach out to loved ones if you need to vent out about your feelings or brainstorm solutions.
I love the brainstorm solutions part of it.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Keeping it bottled up and sealed. I mean, obviously, as you clearly said, do not do. Keeping all these things bottled up inside is a recipe for disaster later on in
Well,
your life.
it's basically, it's a volcano waiting to erupt is what it is.
Yeah.
And it didn't erupt until I was in my late 30s.
Yeah.
And I was already a mother of 3,
Yeah.
married more than 10 years. And that was not healthy for the environment that I was in, for those feelings to erupt at the time that it did. I think that I know that therapy is not an option for everybody, because therapy, I think, is a luxury.
It is. It is very much a luxury.
But what I will tell you is this: the library's free.
The library is free.
And I say that jokingly before, but I mean that truthfully now. There are so many books that I have read in the past 2-3 years that have been so helpful to my overall healing when it comes to my traumatic experiences in my life. And a lot of those books I got from the library for free. I researched things that would be, self-help.
Yeah.
And I was able to read them, and it like empowered me. So I think that that's a great way for someone, rely on other resources.
Yeah. Because of this, we actually like to have an environment here at home where our kids are allowed to speak and talk, and they're given a platform to say how they feel, even about us, and things that they may, so that we can all learn from each other. And I want to point out that one time we had a friend over, and we were just kind of being who we are as a family. We were all talking. We were all hanging out as a group, and the boys were talking the way that they were, and we were talking about interesting topics, and they were.
I think we were talking about sexuality.
Yes,
and
all
that
this
kind of
stuff, right? We're having a conversation about sexuality and different sexes and all this other stuff, and a really interesting conversation we were having with our kids. And our friend at the time started crying.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
And they started crying because they were so blown away how free the children were able to speak amongst their parents. And she went on to say that she didn't have that dynamic at home, and we actually gave her a platform to be able to talk and let all that stuff out.
Yeah.
So I think that in that moment, we were her support system. But I just, I wanted to point out how important.
Wow, that's such a great. I didn't even think of it
Yeah,
like that.
I wanted to point how important it was for her to have someone to speak to in that moment about that situation.
Yeah.
And I think that it was very therapeutic for her at the time. And so if you're living in a toxic household, be sure to have some type of support system, someone, whether it's family, brothers, siblings, cousins, friends that you can trust with what's going on in your life. But definitely talk it all out.
Yeah.
And lastly, coming at number one is, in the event that you don't have a support system, get additional support if you need it. If you feel like you don't have enough positive support, consider joining a support group. There's support groups that are for children with toxic parents, or you can also join different groups, like groups that deal with anxiety, depression, children of alcoholic parents, like all of these,
or like parents that have drug abuse.
Yes, all of these groups, they end up being support systems for children who are dealing with toxic parents who don't have a support system within their own family. So if you feel like that you're listening to us, and right prior to this you were like, yeah, that's all great, but I don't even have that, there are groups out there. I mean, you know what I mean? And they're free to go to. Most of these people, they do it out of charity, out of the kindness of their heart, because they know that there are people out there that need places to go where they can speak to other people and release these emotions and just feel like they have somebody in their life that they can go to and talk to.
And this is something that when I was growing up, this was not afforded to me.
Right.
The internet opened up a whole new world of access to help or access to information that I did not have. And I feel so happy for the younger generations, even though sometimes that access to that information can be harmful. But in this instance, I think it can be beneficial.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to point out that a lot of these things, if they go unspoken about, are the catalyst of a person becoming depressed, right? Think about the word, depress. You have this mounting pressure on something that presses down. So when you're carrying these traumatic emotions, they're weighted down on you, and they press down on your emotions. They depress you. The opposite of depression is expression. It is how you reverse engineer depression. And if you do not talk about these things, you're not expressing. You need to express in order to alleviate depress. So don't be shy. Don't be too proud. Don't feel like you're some type of sucker or loser or desperate, like your life sucks because you went to some support group to speak to some random people about what's going on in your life because you don't have nobody to talk to. You're gonna find yourself in a place later on in life where you're gonna be depressed because you're gonna be carrying all these emotions, and something may happen. You may go 5, 20, 15, 20 years fine in your life thinking that you moved on, but then something's going to happen that's going to trigger those emotions from your childhood, and that's just going to spring out like fucking Pandora's box, and then you're going to have to fucking deal with that shit. Yeah. All right, am I ringing a bell right now?
That's me.
Yeah, exactly. So find a way to express yourself, whether it's with close friends and family or with a group. I think that I feel like with a group is better, because you're going and you're talking to people
that are like-minded.
They're not only are they like-minded, but they're not within your close circle. So you have the ability to like really let out and vent all of these things without anyone in your family really knowing what's going on. If that's the type of approach that you really want to have,
it can be like a judgment-free zone.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is great. Ivo, I think that's a great way to wrap this up.
Absolutely.
That was actually beautifully said.
Thank you.
As you always do. Ivo be on his guru shit. So like as always, I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. If you enjoy listening to Ivo and I's conversations here on Shit Talk Fridays, all we ask is that you either like, subscribe, share, I don't know, however you think you can support us. Want to leave a review on any of the platforms that we're streaming on, because like we're literally on everything. We're on fucking Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on Google, we're on Amazon, we're on YouTube, we're on all of them. We would love if you would take the time and do that for us if you are consuming our content and you enjoy it. If you hate us, then fuck it. I don't know what to tell you.
Keep it pushing.
Right? But with that being said, until next Friday, ladies and gentlemen, peace out.